It was a dark and stormy night in the small town of Amityville, New York. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it a chilling reminder of the past. The infamous house at 112 Ocean Avenue stood silent, its windows dark and empty. The house had been abandoned for years, ever since the last family had fled in terror. The townspeople whispered about the horrors that had taken place within its walls, but no one dared to speak of them aloud. The house had a long and sordid history. Built in the early 1900s, it had been the site of several gruesome murders and mysterious disappearances. The most infamous of these incidents had occurred in 1974, when a man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. had brutally murdered his entire family. The house had been empty for a time after that, but eventually another family moved in. They too experienced strange occurrences, and soon fled, leaving the house abandoned once again. The legend of the Amityville House had grown over the years, attracting the curious and the brave. But the house remained empty, a silent witness to the horrors that had taken place within its walls. It was said that the spirits of the dead still lingered there, trapped in the house, unable to move on. One summer, a group of 4 college students decided to investigate the house. They were intrigued by the stories they had heard and wanted to see if they could uncover the truth. The group consisted of Alex, the leader, Sarah, the skeptic, Mark, the tech expert, and Jenny, the sensitive. As they approached the house, they felt a sense of unease. The air was heavy, and the wind seemed to carry whispers of voices long gone. The house loomed before them, its dark windows staring down like empty eyes. "Are we really doing this?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Come on, Sarah," Alex replied. "It's just an old house. What could possibly go wrong?" Jenny shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. "I don't know, guys. Something about this place feels off." Mark, carrying a backpack full of equipment, shrugged. "It's just the stories getting to you. Let's get inside and see if there's anything worth filming." They pushed open the creaking front door and stepped into the dark foyer. The air inside was musty, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. Mark set up his camera while Alex and Sarah explored the ground floor. Jenny stayed close to Mark, her eyes darting around nervously. The house was eerily quiet. The only sound was the occasional creak of the floorboards as they moved. They found old furniture covered in dust, family photos faded with age, and a sense of lingering sadness in the air. As they moved through the house, strange things began to happen. The temperature dropped suddenly, and they could see their breath in the air. The lights flickered, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Jenny felt a cold hand brush against her arm, and she gasped, looking around frantically. "Did you feel that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Feel what?" Mark asked, his attention focused on his camera. "A hand. It felt like someone touched me," Jenny replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark shook his head. "You're just spooking yourself. There's no one else here." But Jenny knew what she had felt. She rubbed her arm, trying to shake off the cold sensation. As they continued to explore, the feeling of unease grew stronger. In the basement, they found a strange room, hidden behind a false wall. It was small and windowless, with strange symbols carved into the walls. The air was thick and heavy, and a sense of dread filled the room. Jenny said, her voice shaking, "Guys, I don't think we should be here. This place feels wrong," she added. Alex ignored her, fascinated by the symbols. "These look like some kind of occult markings. Maybe this was used for rituals or something." Mark, always the skeptic, laughed. "Or maybe it's just graffiti. People love to make up stories about haunted houses." But as they stood in the room, a low growl echoed through the basement. They turned, their flashlights flickering, and saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. It was tall and dark, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Alex called out, his voice shaking, "Who's there?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it moved closer, its footsteps echoing in the small room. The temperature dropped even further, and the air grew thick with the scent of decay. Suddenly the figure lunged at them, and the group screamed. Mark dropped his camera and they scrambled to get out of the basement. As they ran up the stairs, they could hear the sound of heavy footsteps following them. They burst out of the house, gasping for breath. The air outside felt warm compared to the icy chill inside the house. They turned to look back at the house, but the figure was gone. Sarah gasped, clutching her chest. "What the hell was that?" Alex said, his voice trembling. "I don't know, but we're not going back in there." Jenny nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We need to get out of here, now!" They ran to their car and sped away from the house, not looking back. As they drove, they could still feel the cold chill clinging to them. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of their dormitory, where they collapsed in relief. For days, they couldn't shake the feeling of unease. Strange things continued to happen around them. Objects moved on their own, lights flickered, and they heard whispers in the dark. Jenny, in particular, was plagued by nightmares of the shadowy figure. One night she woke up to find the figure standing at the foot of her bed. It reached out a hand and she screamed, scrambling out of bed. But when she turned on the lights, the figure was gone. The group decided to do some research on the house, hoping to find answers. They discovered that the room they had found in the basement was rumored to be a portal to the other side. It was said that the room had been used by a cult that worshipped dark entities and that they had performed rituals there to summon spirits. The more they learned, the more they realized the danger they were in. The house was a gateway, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. The spirits trapped there were restless and angry, and they had latched onto the group. Desperate for help, they sought out a local paranormal investigator, a woman named Evelyn. She was an expert in the supernatural and had experience dealing with haunted locations. Evelyn agreed to help them, and they returned to the house together. As they entered, Evelyn immediately sensed the presence of the spirits. She instructed the group to stay close and not to touch anything. They made their way to the basement where Evelyn set up her equipment. She began to chant softly, calling out to the spirits. The air grew heavy, and the temperature dropped once again. The shadowy figure appeared standing in the doorway. This time, however, it wasn't alone. Other figures began to materialize, their faces twisted in pain and anger. Evelyn continued to chant, her voice growing stronger. The spirits shrieked, their voices filling the room. The symbols on the walls began to glow, and the room shook. The group huddled together, terrified. They could feel the spirits' anger, their desire for vengeance. But Evelyn didn't waver. She held out a talisman, a small object inscribed with protective symbols, and shouted a final command. The room exploded with light, and the spirits screamed, their forms dissolving into the air. The temperature returned to normal and the air felt lighter. Evelyn collapsed, exhausted. The group rushed to her side, helping her up. "Is it over?" Alex asked, his voice trembling. Evelyn nodded, her face pale. "The portal is closed and the spirits have been banished. But the house, it's still dangerous. It always will be." They left the house, grateful to be alive. The experience had shaken them to their core and they knew they would never forget it. They had come face to face with the supernatural and it had left its mark on them. The Amityville house remained empty, its dark windows staring out at the town. The stories of its haunting continued to circulate, but no one dared to enter again. The house stood as a reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead, and the dangers of disturbing what should be left alone. As for the group, they vowed never to speak of what had happened. They returned to their normal lives, but the memory of that night lingered. They could still feel the cold chill of the spirits, the weight of their anger. They knew that they had been lucky to escape with their lives, and they would never take the supernatural lightly again. And so, the legend of the Amityville house continued, a tale of terror that would be told for generations. The house remained a mystery, a place of darkness and fear. It stood as a testament to the power of the unknown, and the dangers of delving too deeply into the mysteries of the supernatural. In the years that followed, others would come to the house, drawn by its dark reputation. Some would leave disappointed, finding nothing but an old, empty building. Others would leave terrified, having caught a glimpse of the spirits that still lingered there. But the house itself remained unchanged. a silent witness to the horrors of the past, and a reminder that some places are better left undisturbed.